The Joe Jackson stuff. The Joe Jackson stuff. And like you said already, like I've said already, we thought that his depiction was not the best. We thought that it was relatively one note. It was one beat. We've talked about what we could do in order to change that.
Mm-hmm.
My question is this: if you're part of the family and your family's legacy involves this person, this character, this this villain, so to speak, how much of his story do you feel needs to be portrayed in a nuanced light? Because we know that this story and it had to get the approval from the Jackson family. It had to
Right.
get approval from his brothers. It had to
Right.
be it was produced by them. So they
Mm-hmm.
were okay with everything that was in this.
Mm-hmm.
How much, and if if you have a parent or a relative who has had a difficult or was difficult in their part of your life, how much of that do you think needs to be more nuanced, or are they okay with it just being one beat and that he's the villain? Because that's kind of how I feel they must feel,
Yeah.
and that they don't want to
Right.
give him any credit.
Right.
And I think for the fact of making a better movie and a better story, that it would be better if he was more more well rounded. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
do you think that that needs to be part of it, or do you think that they're probably just okay with the way that it was?
Well, I agree with that. I think they were okay with the way it was. And I don't know if the writers approached them as like, okay, we need we need to make him like this antagonist character. He has to be the antagonist in this. And th- this is how the story is going to go. And if we do it this story this way, this will produce the best results. Right. But what I know from listening, I've listened to a number of interviews from all the brothers outside of Michael. They seem to all have a very different opinion of Joe than Michael did.
Mm-hmm.
All of them. Jackie, Tito, may he rest in peace. Marlon, Randy, Jermaine, they all had a very different opinion of Joe than Michael did. Now there could be a story behind that. Joe probably did press Michael more than the rest of them. But you could have explored that more in the story in the movie. Um, so yeah, I think they were probably okay with it. I mean, hey, we got to get this movie made. We need an antagonist in this. So they probably went along with it. However, from what I've heard from their mouths, they felt very differently about Joe, and and I wish they would have made him more of the driving force. That without Joe, we probably wouldn't have reached the type of success that we had without Joe, and this is kind of somewhat off topic, somewhat. But I think they kind of also they did Joe wrong as a father, but they did Joe wrong as a businessman too. Joe made a lot of mistakes as a father. He made a lot of mistakes as a businessman, but he did a lot of good in both of those too.
Oh yeah. Oh
He
yeah.
removed them out of Motown before Motown could destroy them, because Motown would have destroyed them. They would have kept them in that sort of like ABC era,
Yep.
and they
Yep.
never would have blossomed. They never would have gotten into songwriting. Michael would have never become the businessman he became with owning your own catalog. Joe put him in there.
He pushed for that.
He
Yes.
pushed for that.
Yes.
Exactly. And then, the movie, even when Sony's Epic, and then which became Sony, CBS, that conglomerate, they did things to Michael that he complained about for the rest of his life that Joe warned him in the early 80s about. If Joe was probably more connected to Michael as he got into his later life, we probably don't see some of the negative things that Michael experienced in the late 80s and 90s if
Yep.
he had more control over his career.
Yep.
So you take it there.
Yep. Yep. No, I'm with you. I'm with you 100%. That's just more of the nuance that we have been wanting. And we know these things happen because we've never been told this, but we can see the results like you said. You can see his drive to, own his own music. You can see his
Mhm.
drive to own the Beatles catalog. He knew what ownership was. He knew how much that meant to own those things. So by him doing so, he was able to gain control. And who did he learn that from? You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like even if you say that he didn't learn that completely from Joe, Joe played some aspect in that. And this isn't, we're not here to be Joe Jackson apologists, but we just want the full story told. And I feel like there's more, and I could hate someone's guts, but if that someone gave me a bead of information that I can use, you better believe I'm gonna take it. And when you're going to tell this story, you should tell that part of the story too. And it doesn't take much. It really doesn't take much. And we've went over it before, but it doesn't take much to give a more of a balanced view to someone, as opposed to being able to look him up on the villain Wikipedia and have Joe Jackson like literally show up on here. So, um, but yeah, I don't think. And now this isn't to say that he was a good person. Like,
Right.
no, I don't
Right.
think that he was a good person. But there were some qualities in there that they could have extrapolated and showed us to give the movie and his story more balance. And I think that's all that we were looking for. So, yeah, what do you think? Are we wrong for trying to shine a sort of a different and more nuanced light on Joe Jackson? Are we completely off base? If we are, let us know in the comments below. Appreciate you.